Sometimes life slows down just long enough for us to notice the things that truly matter. And in one of those quiet moments, I realized something simple, but incredibly profound. I didn't just meet you, I didn't just know you, I saw you right here in my heart. And that feeling, it wasn't loud or dramatic or wrapped in fireworks. It was calm. It was honest. It was real. Like the universe saying, hey, this person, they're meant to mean something to you. And today, I want to talk about that kind of love. The kind that doesn't arrive with a shout, but with a gentle knock. The kind that makes you breathe a little deeper and live a little truer. Because when you see someone in your heart, everything changes. I saw you in my heart long before I ever understood what that meant. It wasn't a flash of lightning or some overwhelming surge that knocked me breathless. It was quieter, softer, like the way morning light slowly turns the edges of the world gold before anyone else wakes up. That's how you appeared inside me, not as a sudden revelation, but as a presence I somehow already knew. A presence that made me pause and question why something felt different, why the air felt fuller, why my own heartbeat seemed to lean toward the thought of you. I think love has its own timing. It doesn't always show up the moment you're ready for it, or when you think you deserve it. Sometimes it slips into your life almost shyly, like it doesn't want to cause a disturbance, like it's patiently waiting for you to notice it. And when I first felt you in my heart, I didn't recognize it as love. I just felt this warmth, this calm, this strange sense of familiarity, as if my soul had turned around and whispered, there you are. Even though my mind hadn't caught up yet, there's a strange kind of beauty in recognizing someone with your heart before you recognize them with your eyes. It makes you wonder if maybe some connections are ancient, older than the moments we remember. Maybe we meet some people long before life introduces us to them. Maybe the heart starts its conversations long before the world does. And when I finally realized that what I felt was you, already living quietly inside the deepest part of me, I understood that love doesn't always announce its arrival. Sometimes it simply waits for us to slow down enough to hear it. When I saw you in my heart, the world around me didn't suddenly change. I did. My thoughts felt gentler, my days felt less heavy. Even the silence around me felt different, not empty, just peaceful, like it had been filled with something invisible yet real. It's strange how one feeling can make the rest of life feel a little less sharp, a little less chaotic. You softened the edges of my world without saying a word, without even knowing you were doing it. Love, real love, doesn't have to be loud. It doesn't have to demand attention or prove itself. Sometimes love is the quiet knowing, the subtle shift in the way you breathe when you think of someone. It's the way your chest feels just a little too small for the feeling expanding inside it. The way you start noticing moments you never would have noticed before. A song feels like it's trying to say something to you. A sunset feels like it's painting something you've felt but never spoken. Even the rhythm of your own footsteps starts sounding like it's carrying a message from your heart to your mind, trying to explain something your words aren't ready to say. And when I saw you in my heart, that was what happened. Life didn't get louder, it got clearer. I began to understand myself through the way I felt for you. Not because I needed you to complete something in me, but because your presence illuminated the parts of me I had forgotten. The parts that still believed in softness, in compassion, in hope. The parts that still believed in connection that didn't need to be forced or begged for. The parts that remembered what it felt like to care without fear. There's a moment when you realize someone isn't just passing through your life. You don't always recognize it right away, but eventually something in you settles and says, I don't want to imagine a world without this person. Not out of dependency or desperation, but out of recognition, out of gratitude, out of the deep understanding that some people make your soul feel like it's finally speaking its true language. And even if you haven't said it out loud, even if the words haven't found their way into the air yet, your heart already knows their name. Seeing you in my heart meant seeing my world differently. It meant finding courage where I used to feel hesitation. It meant feeling hope where I used to feel emptiness. I began to realize that love isn't always about romance or grand gestures. Sometimes love is simply the choice to care, the choice to show up, the quiet decision to let someone matter. And you mattered even before I fully understood why. You mattered in a way that didn't demand explanation. You mattered in a way that felt natural, instinctive, honest. I think we underestimate how powerful those internal moments are, the ones no one else sees. The moment you wake up and realize a thought of someone was there before consciousness fully returned. The moment you're in the middle of your day and their name drifts into your mind like a leaf falling gently from a tree. The moment you're alone in silence and instead of feeling lonely, you feel connected. You feel accompanied by a presence that isn't physically there but is deeply present inside you. That's what it felt like to see you in my heart, like I wasn't alone anymore. But not because someone filled a void. It was more like someone recognized a space that had always been waiting to be understood. Sometimes the heart knows things the mind isn't ready to say. The heart speaks in feelings, not sentences, in warmth, not definitions. And when I saw you there, in that quiet, emotional space inside me, I realized that love isn't about owning or controlling or expecting. Love is about recognizing. It's about seeing someone for who they are and feeling grateful that the universe allowed your paths to cross. It's about wanting to understand them, wanting to hear them, wanting to be gentle with their wounds and patient with their fears. It's about knowing they are human and loving them not in spite of that, but because of it. Maybe that's why your presence inside me felt so natural. You weren't a disruption. You were an alignment. You weren't a storm. You were clarity. You didn't enter my heart like a force. You entered like a reminder. A reminder that love doesn't always demand intensity. Sometimes it asks for honesty. Sometimes it asks for vulnerability. Sometimes it asks for the simple willingness to let someone matter without needing certainty, without needing guarantees, without needing the perfect moment. Because love creates its own moments. Love creates its own courage. Love creates its own reasons to keep going. As I stood with the realization that you were already inside my heart, I felt something shift within me, something gentle, something real. I felt the desire to protect the connection, not out of fear of losing it, but out of respect for what it meant. I felt myself wanting to grow, to become someone who could hold love without letting fear poison it, someone who could stand in the truth of what they felt without apology. Someone who understood that love doesn't weaken us when it's real. It strengthens us, it grounds us, it reminds us that we are capable of feeling deeply, of caring sincerely, of choosing with our whole soul rather than just our logic. And maybe that's what this whole thing is about. Not grand declarations or perfect words, but the quiet truth that lives in the heart. The truth that says, I saw you, I felt you, and something inside me changed. The truth that doesn't need permission to exist. The truth that doesn't ask for validation, the truth that simply is, the truth that reveals itself slowly, gently, patiently, waiting for us to acknowledge it, waiting for us to breathe it in, waiting for us to finally say, even if only silently, yes, this is real, this is what I feel, this is what my heart already knew. When I say that I saw you in my heart, I don't mean it in the way people casually toss around feelings, or the way stories exaggerate love as fireworks and sudden revelations. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't overwhelming. It wasn't the kind of moment that shakes the earth or demands attention from anyone around me. It was quieter. So much quieter than anything I had ever felt. And in that quietness was a depth I couldn't ignore. It was like my soul had whispered before my mind had time to translate the message, a recognition that wasn't logical or deliberate but instinctive, like something ancient waking up inside me. It was the kind of moment that doesn't shout. It breathes, slowly, gently, patiently. When I felt you there, deep in a place I rarely visit myself, it wasn't even clear at first. I didn't think, this is love. I didn't draw conclusions or give it definitions. Instead, it felt like warmth. Like someone had placed a light inside me, a soft one. Not bright enough to blind me, but steady enough to guide me. I carried that warmth without realizing it was you. I walked with it, sat with it, slept with it. Every day it was there, an unspoken company I didn't know how to name. And even though nothing dramatic was happening on the outside, something was moving on the inside, shifting pieces of me I didn't even realize could move. There are moments in life when something inside you speaks before you're ready to understand its language. Moments when you feel something before you're brave enough to acknowledge it. And that's what it was like seeing you in my heart. The feeling arrived long before the meaning did. It rested there like a gentle truth waiting for me to catch up. It didn't push. It didn't impose. It simply existed, the way a sunrise exists, whether you're looking at it or not. Just because you don't see it yet doesn't make it any less real. And that's how you were inside me, real, present, quietly illuminating pieces of my inner world. Love, the real kind, isn't always an explosion. Sometimes it's an unfolding, a slow dawning, a steady warming of places inside you that you thought had gone cold. I used to think love had to be intense to be true, that it had to be loud or dramatic or decorated with perfect timing. But when I saw you in my heart, everything I thought I knew about love softened. It became clear that love can be gentle, it can be patient, it can be the most powerful force in the world without raising its voice. And the more I noticed that warmth, the more I realized it was shaping me from within. Not because you were trying to shape me, but because love naturally expands us, even when it's grounded in silence. What surprised me most was how your presence inside me didn't feel foreign. It didn't feel like something new entering my life. It felt familiar, like rediscovering a place I'd somehow forgotten, a place I'd visited in dreams or memories I couldn't quite place. It made me question whether the heart remembers things the mind cannot, whether sometimes we meet someone long before our physical paths cross, whether certain connections are carved into us by something larger than coincidence. Because when I finally recognized that the warmth inside me was connected to you, it didn't feel like a discovery. It felt like a reminder, like I was remembering a truth my soul had always known. And the more I let myself sit with that feeling, the more I noticed how subtly everything else began to change. My days didn't suddenly become perfect or extraordinary, but they felt lighter. The world looked a little different, softer around the edges. The sky seemed wider, the air felt easier to breathe. Even the everyday noise around me felt quieter, as if something inside me had turned down the volume. I wasn't searching for you. I wasn't trying to force anything. I was simply carrying the truth that you were there in my heart, and that truth influenced the way I moved through the world. That's the strange power of love you don't speak yet. The love that lives inside you before it ever reaches your lips. It becomes part of your rhythm, part of your breath, part of the way you see yourself. I found myself thinking more gently, feeling more deeply. I started noticing beauty in small things again, things I used to overlook. The way sunlight filters through leaves, the way a quiet night feels like a blanket over the soul, the way laughter carries through the air, like a reminder that joy still exists in unexpected corners. And in those details I felt you. It wasn't that you were replacing anything inside me, you were awakening parts of me that had been resting for too long. Seeing you in my heart made me confront something important. Love isn't always about what we do for someone. Sometimes it's about what their presence does for us, even without their knowledge. You brought stillness to the chaos I'd accepted as normal. You brought meaning to moments that had once felt empty. You brought clarity to the confusion that had followed me for years. And maybe you didn't plan any of that. Maybe you weren't even aware, but that's the magic of truth that arises from the heart. It doesn't ask permission to exist. It simply happens, quietly, patiently, and it waits for you to recognize it. There's an honesty that lives in the heart that doesn't exist anywhere else. The heart doesn't negotiate or bargain or overthink. It just knows. It knows when someone matters. It knows when someone has left an imprint on your soul. It knows when something real has entered your life. And no matter how much the mind tries to argue or analyze or resist, the heart remains steady in its truth. When I saw you there, in that inner space I don't allow many people to enter, I realized I wasn't choosing the feeling. The feeling had chosen me. And the more I tried to understand it, the more I realized that love is not always something we fall into. Sometimes it's something we grow into. The heart is a quiet storyteller. It doesn't narrate with words, it narrates with sensations. Softness, warmth, ache, recognition, pull. When you appeared in my heart, you became part of that story. Part of a chapter I never expected, but one that felt strangely complete. I didn't need reasons. I didn't need explanations. I didn't need guarantees. I just knew that something inside me had shifted toward you. Not dramatically, but unmistakably. And once the heart sees someone really sees them, it doesn't unsee them. It doesn't forget. It doesn't retreat. It holds them gently, carefully, without demanding anything in return. I also began noticing the subtle ways you became part of my inner world. I would think of something beautiful, and your presence would appear in the feel-in G that followed. I would hear a song and it felt like it understood something about you even if you weren't there. I would sit alone, not lonely, but accompanied by the quiet memory of your energy. It wasn't fantasy. It wasn't wishful thinking. It was connection. Simple, honest, internal connection. You lived in the space where my deepest truths reside, and that felt like the safest place you could be. And when I say I saw you in my heart, I don't mean I imagined a perfect version of you. I didn't paint you with ideal colors or flawless shapes. I saw you as human. I saw you as someone with fears, dreams, quiet wounds, quiet strengths. I saw your light and your shadows, not in detail, but in essence. and I accepted all of it without needing more. The heart doesn't fall for perfection, it falls for truth, for authenticity, for the quiet spark that someone carries within them, for the way their presence feels, not their appearance, not their actions, not their accomplishments, just their presence. That's what I saw. The truth of who you were beneath everything the world sees. There is something profound about recognizing someone with your heart before you say anything aloud. It means the connection formed in silence, unshaped by expectations or pressure. It means it grew honestly, without influence, without performance. The heart doesn't care about timing or circumstances. It doesn't wait for the right moment. It doesn't ask if you're ready. It simply responds to what feels real. And what felt real was you. The quiet imprint you left on the deepest part of me, the part I rarely show, the part that rarely trusts. Yet you appeared there naturally, effortlessly, as if you belonged. I embraced that truth. The more love began to feel like something I didn't have to chase or force. It felt like something I could grow with, something that could grow within me. I didn't need certainty. I didn't need promises. I didn't need to define the feeling. I just needed to honor it, to acknowledge that seeing you in my heart meant something. Something soft, something real, something worth trusting. And as that trust grew, so did my courage, the courage to feel deeply, to care without fear, to let tenderness guide me instead of keeping my guard raised, to believe that love doesn't break us when it's real. It heals us, it teaches us, it opens us. You became a quiet center in my inner world, a place of calm, a place of warmth, a place I could rest in without hesitation. I didn't need anything from you. I didn't expect anything. The love that formed inside me wasn't about possession or desire or outcome. It wasn't about needing you to fill something in me. It was about appreciation, about recognition, about knowing that your existence had touched mine in a way that mattered. You brought meaning to corners of my heart I had neglected. You illuminated rooms inside me that had been dim for too long. And that is a gift no one can manufacture. It is a gift that only truth can offer. Seeing you in my heart changed the way I understood connection. I used to think connection required effort, shared experiences, shared time, shared conversations. But this connection began in stillness. It grew in silence. It didn't need to be spoken to be real. It didn't need proof to exist. The heart simply recognized you and held you there. And the more I allowed myself to feel that, I realized that love doesn't always begin with two people meeting. Sometimes it begins with one soul recognizing another. Sometimes it begins with a feeling long before a moment. Sometimes it begins with an inner truth that reveals itself slowly. There is vulnerability in seeing someone with your heart. It means allowing yourself to feel something without knowing where it leads. It means trusting an emotion that cannot be measured or guaranteed. But that vulnerability is also strength. To feel deeply is to be alive. To love quietly is to be brave. To hold someone inside you without asking for anything in return is to understand the purest form of affection. And that's what I felt. A pure, steady, unforced affection that grew simply because it wanted to grow. I realized that love doesn't always ask you to act. Sometimes it asks you to understand, to listen, to witness, to honor the feeling without rushing it or defining it. I didn't need to turn what I felt into a confession or a claim. I didn't need to turn it into something dramatic. I just needed to let it exist, to let it breathe, to let it be part of me. And the more I did that, the more I understood that this kind of love isn't fragile. It's not desperate. It doesn't fear endings or beginnings. It exists for the sake of existing. It lives because it is true. And truth, when felt sincerely, doesn't demand anything except presence. And so I carry you in my heart, not as a weight, but as a light. Not as an expectation, but as a truth. Not as a fantasy, but as a feeling that grew honestly. A feeling that reminds me I am capable of deep connection. That my soul recognizes beauty not in perfection, but in presence. That my heart still opens, still softens, still believes. And seeing you there quietly, gently, sincerely, taught me something I will carry with me always. Love doesn't need to announce itself to be real. Sometimes the most powerful love is the kind that begins in silence, blooms in stillness, and lives inside you without ever needing to be spoken aloud.